Hey, what's up, guys? Today we're going to talk about some of the deer that I've killed here in Michigan and how it all went down. All right, so one of my first ever deer here in Michigan was actually on state land. It's basically what started all the craze for me of trying to chase a deer with a lot of horn on them. I've definitely shot some small bucks in my time, but I've always in the back of me wanted to always chase much bigger deer, which is what led to me starting to visit Ohio. But this one particular deer, it's pretty amazing everything that happened there. It was state land. I'll actually tell you, it was in Roscommon County. There's a swamp back there called Dead Stream Swamp, and it's nasty. Like, you gotta wear waders boots. It's usually wet. That year it was really wet, almost to the top of my wader boot, which come just below my knees. But I've been hunting since I was 12, never even shot a deer, rarely even seen a deer. And I was 18 when I killed this buck. It wasn't my first deer. The year prior, I actually went to what we call the farm, my Aunt Dee Dee up in Kingston. She has deer that would just pop out in her field every day at the same time at 5 o'clock. And I was like, Aunt Dee Dee, I want to kill a deer. So this doe came out right at time, big old doe, and I shot her. And that ended up being my first deer at the ranch. You know, it's basically, like I said, they show up on time every day. So, but the following year, had no idea this was coming. But basically back in that swamp, because I was younger, my dad wouldn't let me walk all the way to the back with my uncle. He'd always put me up closer towards the road, 100, 200 yards off the road in a pop-up blind with my shotgun. Back then baiting was legal, and yes, we did bait. But I never seen anything. For like 3 years, I never seen anything. It was frustrating. I would imagine me seeing deer all the time, and I never seen any deer. But so this year, my uncle decides, as the way he would put it, you're going to come to the back with the men. So my uncle was about a mile back in this swamp, okay? Like I said, you had to have wader boots up to your knees. It was thick forest, trees falling all over the place. But if you walked all the way back, you hit this ridge. And it was like in golfing terms, it'd be like a dog leg. It comes down and then wraps around. Sorry about that. Had a lot of crash out there. My dog got into something. But, so, like I said, it was a dog leg. So he was basically on one end, and then it like kind of comes down and then curved, in the shape of a dog leg. And he kept saying he'd see deer over there all the time, and they would cut him off, and he wouldn't get to see them. So my first year back there, he puts me back there. I remember it was a Wednesday. It was the second day of deer season, of gun season up there. And I remember sitting there. It was cold, cold, cold. And I remember hearing the ice break. And to my back right, I could hear the ice breaking, and I started hearing the grunting, and I freaked out. Immediately grabbed my shotgun. I was holding it across my chest like I was in the army, doing an army march. I remember clicking the safety off right away, which probably not the safest thing, but I was going to be ready, and I didn't even move my head. I literally was just moving my eyes. I didn't move anything in my body. I was so scared and excited at the same time. And I could see out of the corner of my eye a body moving through. And in fact, I was so, fixed on the body moving to my right, I never even seen the doe that already got through and walked forward. And I remember him stopping behind a pine tree that covered his antlers. All I could see was his face and his nose. And every time he exhaled, I could see the hot air coming out of his nose. It was crazy. And then that's when the doe shook the snow off her back, and she started continuing on. I know he knew I was there. He was smelling the air. He didn't want to go any further, but because she took off, he took off, and then stopped with just enough of his shoulder sticking out, and looked back in my direction right away without me even moving. He knew where I was. He could smell me, but he wanted her. So all I remember is him stopping just enough. I swung that gun around so fast, and as soon as I put the scope up to my face, I could see it on his shoulder, and I pulled the trigger. And that was it. I just remember shaking so bad. At this point, I still didn't even know how big the deer was, okay? I could not tell you a single point, how many points. I couldn't even tell you if it was actually legal, unfortunately. I just got so excited, and looking back, that probably wasn't a good thing, but my first buck, 18, crazy. So my uncle comes over, and he walks over and, asks, well, where'd he go? And I point. We get down, we're looking for blood. There is no blood at all. No blood. We look for 20 minutes, can't find blood at all. I'm actually like choking up inside because I was so upset, even though I didn't know how big the deer was. And he asked me, well, which way did he run? And I pointed the direction where I told him I seen him run. I said, I swore I saw him with his head tucked down, and he hopped over that tree, and I never seen him again. Lo and behold, my uncle walked over there while I was still kind of crying over by the tree I shot him at, and he's screaming out, "Oh my God!" And that's all I heard. "Oh my God!" And I was like, "Did you find him?" He goes, "Yes." And he goes, "You son of a bitch, you shot my deer." And I was like, "Shot your deer?" He goes, "This thing's massive." And I had no idea what I shot, but he ended up having almost 3 main beams, but he's a 9-point, by the rules. I try to count them as 11 with all the little stickers, but the stickers aren't even 11 points. But you know what they say in Michigan, if you can hang a ring on it, it counts, right? But this side over here, gnarly, this side broke, okay? So this part was actually hanging down the side of his face because when he died, it cracked. I don't know if it was hurt from before, but I had no idea this deer is this big. I'm sorry, I should probably dust him off. His antlers need a little bit of cleaning, but it was just insane. And my uncle couldn't believe it. I mean, they had pictures of me like sitting on him like a horse. This deer was huge. After we dragged him out, now we're a mile back, and we got him hung up and gutted. He weighed 182 pounds. So it took us 3 hours to get out. He literally, at one point, I tripped and fell, and his body fell on top of me, and I couldn't get up. So they had to come pick the deer off me because I was in some muck. But that was my first Michigan buck. And that's what really started all the craze of me trying to get a deer. Sorry if it's a little dark on this side, but I've always wanted to shoot another one this big, especially because that day my dad said, "You'll never kill another one this big. You set the bar too high." And so far, he's been right. Rough scores like 138 with my terrible measuring, but that's obviously in a non-typical form. But that was my first ever buck. So in Michigan, yep, Roscommon County, Deadstream Swamp. If you walk a ways back in there and you fight through it, there's big deer back there. But you got to work for it, and it's a chore, especially hanging the tree stand. It took us probably an hour just to get in there with all the stuff carrying it on our back, walking through the water. I mean, it was nasty sometimes. Yeah, that's my little spike there. I shot that the following year. I was back-to-back buck champ. But that said, the next one is my 10-point. I got permission to hunt in southeastern Michigan. That's where I live. There's a farm in Romeo. This one's actually a pretty funny story because me and my cousin, once we got permission hunting there, we always have pretty much hunted together. And I always set up his stands. I always tell him where to go. I'm really not a selfish hunter. I try to put people in good spots. Even down in Ohio right now, I have my girlfriend's mom in what I believe probably is one of the best spots on the property. We have actually the biggest deer on camera over there too. But I'm usually not selfish, and I try to set someone a good spot, and we set them up in this spot. And I remember that day I told him, we went out and I said, "Listen, they cut the beans this morning. The deer are going to be out here this afternoon. You need to come out." And he texts back. He goes, "Well, can I come out about like 4:30?" And I was like, "No, I'll be in stand at 3:30. You're going to have to walk through everything." I was like, "I'm not sitting out here that long." I go, "Just come on. What are you doing?" "Oh, I got to go to a dinner with a girlfriend before she goes back up to Central." And I was like, well, man, you got to pick. Which one do you want to do? He's like, "I'll just stay here. Good luck." It wasn't 10 minutes after that text message, I seen this 10-point cross the field at about 105 yards. I had no, it was just, he was way out there, but I didn't think I was actually going to see him. And about an hour and a half later, I hear a buck grunting behind me. Like he circled all the way around, came up behind me, and was grunting, walked right underneath my tree stand before I could even do anything, then popped out in the bean field and started walking away. So I grabbed my grunt call, hit my grunt call. He actually spun back into the woods, and he circled back around me again. I can't believe he didn't smell me with the way the wind was going there, but his tongue was hanging out. He was grunting. There must have been a doe in the area, and he was looking for her, and he didn't care. So I actually have a picture of him in the back of my truck after I shot him. But so I shoot this deer at like 10 steps. He runs headfirst into a tree, snaps this entire part of the beam right off. I'm digging through the leaves like there's gold in there, just trying to find it. And it actually shot pretty far, and I didn't even realize it. But luckily I seen where some leaves were ruffled up, and I went over and checked, and I found it. But the taxidermy fixed that. He's got a big old brow tine right here. I think this one was 8 inches long. It's pretty cool. That is my biggest bow buck to date. Still, to this day, he's the biggest. This one, the 8 point's pretty close, but that's not a Michigan deer. That's from Ohio. I'll talk about that after. I'll tell you about this dinky little 4 point here. This is my first bow buck, actually. I shot this deer, and I was so excited. First bow buck, first bow deer. I wasn't paying attention to how he ran after I shot him. In my mind, he 180'd and ran the other way. Well, that's not what happened. He actually continued the way he was facing and then wrapped back around and ran backwards. So I couldn't find blood, right? So I called my uncle in. I called my cousin in. I know I hit this deer. I saw where I hit him. It was a dead deer. I couldn't understand why I couldn't find no blood. We actually got lost on the property. We got turned around. Now, this is before you could download apps on your cell phone and all that. And, this was still a flip phone back then with no screen. So we got lost for probably about 4 hours trying to find our way out. I don't even know where we ended up half the time. We ended up having to have someone drive up and down the road honking their horn and listening so we could walk in that direction before we finally got back. I never found blood. I had to go back the next day, and I found blood around the edge right where the woods meets like a thicket, and I just happened to find blood there and walked in. He was probably only 60 yards from the stand where he died. It's funny now, but it was freaky then because all of our phones were dying from battery power, and we were getting rained on, so I was worried about that, and what a mess. But so those are my 2 Michigan bucks that I've had mounted. They're pretty nice deer, at least for me. A couple of these racks right here are my girlfriend's dad's, shot up, in the UP. That one and that one. So I would have mounted those suckers, but they did things different back then. And I got a couple other littler bucks, some skulls. The 9 point out here in southeastern Michigan, Armada. Some smaller bucks that I've shot. So like I said, I've shot the small ones. This one was in Romeo too. But I've always wanted to get into shooting bigger deer here in Michigan with the 2 deer tag. Not that I think that would change much, but a lot of people here, they hunt for the food. They don't really care about the antlers, and with as much pressure as we have in this state, it's tough to let them go if you're not in an area that manages. It's most of the time the deer don't make it the next year, especially with how long our gun season is. So I traveled to Ohio. I met a guy on the internet, and I took a chance for $600. It's like a 3.5 day hunt. And I was like, whatever, it's for that money. If I get scammed, I get scammed. But he's sending me pictures of these big old deer, and I'm just like, okay, sure. But I wanted to leave the state. I wanted to hunt in a different state, and I didn't want to do it, and I didn't want to go on public land by myself. So that leads us to this buck, which looking at it now, I was super excited when I shot it, and I'm still proud of it. But this is a baby in Ohio. This was a pat on my back, and they said, oh, maybe next year you'll shoot a nice one. But they were nice about it. They asked me if I was happy. I said I was happy. The landowner was cool. This deer walked 5 yards. It's actually the one you see in the video where he walked sideways. The real reason why I shot him is because of this G2 point here was, for some reason, my eyes were fixated on that, and I was like, oh, that's a nice deer, that's a nice deer, and I didn't realize, there's really no mass, and the other horns were a little shorter, but I also didn't really think I was going to see as big as deer as what he was showing me on camera. And it really confirmed it when the landowner came down, because he was actually a real cool guy too. I'm actually leasing property from him now, so I don't have to pay to hunt down there anymore, you know, aside from the lease. But the landowner, on his way back with the gator, found a couple sheds. So, the landowner shows up with this, and I was just like, wow, look at all the dust in it. I was like, you have deer like this here? And he goes, oh yeah. He goes, we got them bigger than this too. And I looked at the guy who I paid to hunt, and I just felt stupid. And I was like, wow. And the cool thing was, you know, here in Michigan, you ask for a set of sheds, ain't nobody going to give you the sheds. I can tell you that right now. There's very few people here in Michigan that are going to hand you over a shed like this. I told him, I went, man, I wish I could find sheds back home. I actually got another one over here. And the landowner looked right at me and goes, oh, do you want them? And I just kind of looked at him like, man, are you serious? So, I actually found this one. They're side by side with each other. I mean, this one's not as big, but look at the mass, you know? And he goes, yeah, you can have them, man. I just couldn't thank him enough. It was awesome. So, those are the 3 deer I got on the wall. I'm currently hoping my buddy says he had about a 160 behind his house down there in Ohio, and this property I did lease so far, we don't have anything really to gawk at, but my buddy put one of my cameras behind his house, and supposedly if this deer shows up, if he put on 20 more inches from being 4.5 to 5, he's going to give me the green light to hunt him, so that'll be cool. If I get him, I'll be in some serious debt to him, so. But that's a little bit about some of the deer I've killed, and how, you know, how I've gotten into wanting to chase some of these older, mature whitetails. It's hard to do in Michigan, man. You don't see very many old ones. So, but that's that. Hope you guys enjoyed some of the storytelling. Oh, you know, I do got one more. This one is actually deer my girlfriend shot. She shot it with, I believe it was with her mom. They're in the blind up in the UP, and this deer walked out opening day. And she shot it, and they actually just had the horns cut off. And then when we bought our house, I just really wanted another mount, but I had it mounted for her because it's the only deer she shot, and I figured it's a nice deer, so it should have been mounted. So I had it mounted for her. I had found a guy who went out and found a cape in, I think he said Pennsylvania, I think the cape came from. Somewhere out there. He was trying to get, you know, one that was a little bit bigger in the neck, because the deer in the UP usually tend to be a little bigger. But he wanted one that matched the color, you know, because they're darker up there. So he did a great job. So, but other than that, the only other really thing I got in here to talk about, I do have a duck. This is my first ever duck that I shot, which is a little bit of a funny story, but it was kind of a joke when we went out hunting. When I got back into duck hunting, because I went a couple times, never shot one, and then we joked. I said, you know, the first duck I shoot, I'm getting mounted. You know, just kind of joking. And then this one comes over here and ends up being a big old fat Canadian mallard with a triple crow, which is a decently old bird. So at that point, my uncle goes, wow, that's a triple crow. That's a really nice bird. And so the joke turned into me actually having to mount it. So I got him mounted, and first ever duck kill right there. So I need to dust a lot of these mounts off. I've been slacking. But that's the trophy room, the man cave. What I look at, I'm hoping I can put another one on the wall this year. So I've had some opportunities and blew them down in Ohio, but when you see deer that big and you're from Michigan, it freaks you out. Hope you guys enjoyed. If you like this video, hit subscribe, hit like. Ask me any questions in the comments. Glad to answer them. You guys have a good day.